Hey everyone, how's it going? So, as you may or may not know, we're looking for an apartment here in Japan now, and I think a lot of people are curious as to what the process is of getting one. And while we don't know the whole thing yet, since we don't have an apartment yet, we can at least talk about like the application process and how it sort of differs from America from what we know so far. So, maybe it can help you if you're a resident of Japan.
You could call it hunting for apartment in Japan process 1 or something.
Process 1.
Because it is, honestly, it is not a lot different. I mean, there's some similarities, but apartment complexes in Japan are interesting because, like, if you think about apartment complexes in the States, like when Matt and I were looking for apartment complexes, you go to the apartment, and then in the apartment there's offices. And then you go into the offices, and then you talk to the people, and you're like, hey, I'm looking for an apartment. Do you have any in this complex? And that's how, like, you look for an apartment, at least in California. I'm pretty sure that's, like, pretty standardized the rest of the United States. But in Japan, I think most, I won't say all because I'm not 100% sure on that, but most common practice of looking for an apartment is you go through real estate agencies, because real estate agencies are like the middleman between the apartment complex and, you know, the people wanting to rent. So instead of going to the actual apartment that you want to rent, you actually have to find the real estate agent that is in charge of that apartment complex. So what you would do, and how I've done it, is you go to a real estate office, you give them all the criteria you're looking for, and then from that, they'll look through their database to see if they have apartments available in the criteria that you're looking for. And you might have to go through several different real estate offices to see if they have one that you like. In our case, it's a little bit difficult because we have a specific niche that we're trying to look for, and that's a pet-friendly place. And so I went to 3 different real estate offices, and then called 10 different real estate offices to find if there's a pet-friendly place, and most of them told me no, which is pretty hard because in California, most apartment complexes is pet-friendly.
Pet-friendly place actually is really hard to find because you were looking online and, you check the boxes of like what you want in an apartment.
And what area.
And like you pick the area and then it says like, okay, there are 400 listings available or something. And then you check that box that says pets okay and there's like 5.
Yeah, it's
like ridiculously slim.
Yeah.
For finding a place with a pet.
I think for me, so I'm going to clarify this part too, because what I've found so far differs whether you're a military or whether you're a local citizen. Because I get questions from people like, oh, can you tell me what the real estate process is like? But I always ask, like, are you coming as a military or are you coming as like apart from the military? Because military has, real estate agencies that they go through that specialize with military families. Most apartment complexes that military families rent, locals can't even afford.
Yeah, to be honest. If you're looking in the military, the prices are like tripled.
Yeah. And in fact, I would rate them as California prices almost, because you're looking at, for us, we're looking at apartment complexes, and Matt and I aren't the military, by the way. So we have no affiliation with the military, but military members typically when they move out here, they get compensation. They call it COLA. Basically, it's like a relocation compensation, but they pay a specific amount to help offset the cost of rent. So they pay the rent for you, especially if they don't have any base housing and you have to live off base. And when you do that, your relocation office will give you like a list of apartment real estate agencies who work specifically with military families. Now, military families, because the military is paying for it, a lot of apartment complexes that cater for military families tend to be like...
They know this.
Yeah, they know
and
this.
And they hike up the prices, right?
Yeah, because the military pays for it. So usually, like for my cousin, for instance, he has a 3-bedroom, really decent size apartment overlooking the city. Something that I would love to live in, but definitely can't afford as like right now as a local. And
well, it's a military kind of specific place, right?
Yeah, so I think he's paying $1,800 a month, and that's a pretty, like, for me coming from California, that's a pretty normal price, but for here in Japan, that is really a lot.
Yeah.
When average apartment costs are like,
we're looking at places and like that same place would probably be 700, maybe 800.
And oftentimes a lot of those military catered houses allow pets, because they know most Americans have indoor pets.
There's also another reason they hike it up. It's not just because they know that the military is paying for it. The other reason is military people come and go real quick,
Yeah.
right? They're kind of anticipating the person to move in to like, it's possible that they could just move out immediately, like get orders to move somewhere else. Or even if they're not going to do that, you know, their term is only, you know, a couple years, right? Usually.
That's actually a really good point.
And with Japanese families, it is not uncommon to move into a place and then just live there forever. People don't move around here usually. They usually get a place and then the family and their family and their family after that. And whether it's renting or buying, like that's just like what they do. They move into a place and then they stay there for their whole life, like 50 plus years or something.
Yeah. Whether it's a house or whether it's an apartment, it's really common for people to live there for decades. Like, if I think about my grandparents in Idaho, I'm 30, and in the 30 years that I've known them, they've moved around like 3 or 4 different houses, which I've heard people move more. You know, it's buying.
Well, my parents.
Yeah, your parents.
I mean, since I was a kid, we've moved like maybe 4 times, 5 times.
Yeah, it's a common practice in the States to move, but in Japan, like...
Yeah, it's like the upgrade mentality, right? Like, yeah, you can do a little better, you can get a little bigger place. But here it's like, people don't think that.
It's a multi-generational thing. You develop roots, right? You have a root development going on when you're talking about families. Like, families will break off, like kids will go off on their own, get married and build a house themselves, but then their kids will probably live there, and like there's like this whole thing. And so even with apartment complexes, one of the apartment complexes we were looking at, the lady next door to us had lived there for 20 years. And that's a pretty normal thing. My half sister, her mom had rented that. She was like 18 next year. She's been renting that place like way before my half sister was born. So she's been in her apartment for at least 20 years. So people just do not move here.
I don't know. It's just like you have a place, you settle down, and then you never move again.
Yeah, you just develop roots. It's not a bad thing, and it's not a good thing either. But it is different, which is why price differences for military members tend to be a lot higher too, because the turnover rate's so high. Yeah. They have to offset a lot of the costs, and as well as with military, there's also been issues where people will just jet without letting the leasing office know. So one day they'll go to check up on what's going on because they haven't heard, and then they'll find the apartment empty. And that has also happened. So
yeah, that's true.
I'm not saying like that's like the reason and everybody does that, but that's also been an issue. So there's multiple factors as to why prices are so high. I see a lot of times Americans and military families complain about that, but you have to understand it from like the financial and economical point of view of locals and why apartments are so high.
Yeah, it's true.
It's more than, I think it's like people think it's like prejudicism, but it's not. There's a lot more economical factors to it.
I think it just has to do with, one, they know that the military's paying for it, so it's not necessarily directly affecting like their pay. But also too, it's just the fact that like, you know, if they're going to deal with renting the place every couple of years, cleaning it every couple of years, preparing it every couple of years to redo, plus possibly people unknowingly moving out like immediately, cleaning it up probably because they're more dirty. There's pets usually.
Yeah. There's like
and then on top of that, the places are always like bigger too because American military want it. So it kind of does make sense that they're more money anyway since they're bigger places and they're Americanized. But it's just like, you know, who are you going to charge $500 versus $1,000 for if it's the same place? The person that is probably going to move in and then they live there their whole life and you never have to deal with them again? Or, you know, the person that may stay there a couple years, maybe has a dog, you know, has a family and like may leave immediately, you know?
So, yeah.
So it makes sense.
And the reason we bring this up is because comparative to that, we're here as locals because I'm a Japanese citizen. So our style of looking for apartments are going to be a lot more different.
That being said, for us, the differences between renting a place in Japan and renting a place in America as just a regular citizen of that country, the one thing I've noticed personally is there's no credit score here. They don't have that. What you've done in the past with your credit or your rental history, none of that matters. Like, past stuff does not matter. They don't look at that at all. They don't look at where you used to rent. They don't look at what you used to make or what your credit score is or if you have any outstanding balances. They don't care. What they do look at is you can go ahead.
Yeah, let me chime in. Because I'm a little bit more involved in the process of talking to them and stuff.
Yeah.
Not to cut you off or anything. But...
No, but my point is, like, it's a completely different qualification process.
Yeah.
That is all stuff in America. What do you do here?
Okay, so let me explain a little better. But yeah, credit score is not really a thing here. They don't really look at past rental histories. Like, in the States, there were apartment complexes that we didn't qualify for together because I had debt. For the first thing you do is you have an application that you have to fill out that you want to rent this place, right? You fill out your name, where you work, an idea of like how much you make like annually. So you write like, and it's not gross, net. They want to know how much you net each month. So each year they want to know how much you net each year. And then you need a cosigner. No matter what apartment, no matter how many times you've rented, you do have apartment complexes where you don't need a cosigner, but that typically depends on the size and the price range of an apartment. If you're looking to rent a higher priced apartment or higher, like a house especially, like if you're renting a house, you definitely need a cosigner. So like a lot of times people who live on their own, don't have any families, like they have options for places for those type of people to rent without cosigners, but those are actually typically honestly not as, there's not a lot of them compared to places that you do need a cosigner. It is actually a lot harder to find. I went to go check that box and there wasn't as much. So you don't have to have a cosigner, but typically you will need a cosigner.
Yeah. So because you don't have a credit score or anything like that, like what they want is they want you to apply, and aside from qualifying you with the other things you're going to talk about, they want to qualify another person that also that can basically
vouch for you.
Yeah, vouch for you, but they can also pay. They're vouching for you so much that, you know,
they're basically the backup.
Yeah, right? They're like the backup. They're like, this person is vouching for me, you know, and they have this amount of income or whatever. So
yeah, so if you
can trust them
too. Yeah, if you screw up, it will hurt them too.
Mm-hmm.
So getting a cosigner is actually a pretty big deal. Like our cosigner is going to be my mom, and they're going to ask for her name, her address, what she does for a living, and about how much she makes. That is all going to be important. And it all factors into whether your application is going to get approved or not. Not just what you make and what you're capable of doing, but even what your cosigner. Like, for instance, I knew somebody that I was talking to that said she qualified technically financially, but because her cosigner had a bankruptcy history, she didn't qualify because her cosigner wasn't what they would deem as like up to par or honest, because they have issues. So it's like really, really complicated, and it's like, it sounds very asinine, but like when you really think about it, when they don't have credit scores or anything to tie you to how much, you know, you'll be, like how potentially like good you'll be as a tenant, they'll look at everything, the people that you associate with. So your cosigner is also going to be a factor in like whether you'll get approved or not. So right now we're at the process where we just filled out the application and then we faxed it because in Japan they still use fax machines. So when you apply, you send a fax with your application, and then you also have to make a copy of your, like what they call mibun shome, so any kind of like identity, what is the word I'm looking for, like a
theft?
No, identity, like to prove that that is you. Like your driver's license or your passport, so you need to copy that and then also send it with your application. And then from there, this is the next step, and this is as far as I know, is that once they send in the application, they go by how fast they receive your application. So they go from like a number system. So first they'll go from, okay, if you send your application first, you'll be the first one processed. And what that means is they'll send your application form to basically what they call Socio-economic, and it's like a security or insurance company that determines whether or not you are qualified to rent the apartment, like from a financial standpoint. So they'll check the background of your cosigner, they'll check the background for you, they'll check how much you make and all of that. And then they give the okay to the real estate agent saying, okay, we deem them okay to rent this place. So the real estate agency isn't even the company that decides whether or not you're qualified to rent. It's like I guess in the States it would be like background checks, like credit score checks. It's like that, but instead of looking at credit scores, they're looking at like histories of the people in terms of like, have they committed a major crime? Have they gone bankrupt? Like all those like little tiny things. If there's any major red flags, they'll calculate based off of what you wrote on your annual income if you'll even be able to pay for the apartment. Like they'll factor in all of that, and then they'll give the real estate agents the okay that these guys check out. And that's the process where we're at right now. And they said that usually takes about 3 days. From what I understand, a typical real estate transaction from the time you apply to the time they tell you it's okay to move in and give the keys is usually about 10 days. I think after that, I don't know for sure, but from what I understand, after that, then you fill out the like actual contract, and then you have to go to the city office and get your income. That's the official income. And then you have to do all of the official stuff, and then you have to obviously go and pay for your insurance and all of that. And then like there's other processes that I don't know yet, but this is where we are currently.
So this is where we're at.
Right now we're waiting to see if the insurance / security division, or I don't really know what they're called in English. I just know them as Socio-economic. But we're waiting for them to determine whether we qualify. So what we were told was, because one of the things that Matt and I are worried about is whether we will qualify from a like from our like financial perspective, because, and I'm going to add a couple things. I know this is kind of a long explanation, but one of the things that I'm worried about whether we're qualified or not is from a financial aspect, because we're like right at the cusp. And they take into a lot of things factoring too. Like in Japan, the degrees are pretty strong. So if a person has a degree, sometimes even if they're kind of like financially at the cusp, the fact that they have a degree will make a huge difference. Whether somebody has a part-time job opposed to a full-time job will also make a difference. But this is what I was going to say. If you explain your situation to real estate agents, they can also convey that message to the people in charge of processing your application at the security. I'm just going to call them the security and whatever division, because I don't know what it is, but they can actually plead your case for you and explain to them your situation, which may help. Because I mean, at the end of the day, they're humans too, and all they really want to know is whether you can afford the place or not. So they can do that. Whether that'll help or not is another thing, but they can vouch for you as well, as far as like verbally. So that's kind of what both of our real estate agents, because we're applying for 2 places right now, and both of our real estate agents, we explain to them like our situation. We make some money from YouTube. We're both part-time, but we're putting in as a combined income. And our real estate agents, we told them about that. We told them that we just came back from the States, like all of that, and why our situation is the way it is. And they said they would be willing to tell that to the people, so that might help. Like, and then also my co-signer is my mom, who is a pharmacist, so she has a degree. She has her own business that she's had for 30 years. So a lot of that also holds a lot of weight as well.
So that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's really complicated, because it's not just It's not just about like, okay, you make 3 times the rent. There's a lot of like socio-economic things that also play into it, like whether you have a part-time job, whether you have a full-time job, who your co-signer is, like a lot of that take into account.
Yeah, they do a lot of things to, I guess, because in America, it's like, it's basically just, can you afford it or not? And does your track record say you're reliable or not, whatever. But here it's like, some of it has to do with like your character as well, you know? It's like you said, you know, degrees and like your mom's a pharmacist, so it's like a higher quality, you know, regardless of her income or not. It's like, you know, if they both make 50,000 a year or something, and she's a pharmacist and another one works at like a convenience store or something, even though they're making the same amount of money, the pharmacist is like higher level job. So it's like,
Because they see it as more stable.
yeah, even if the pharmacist was making 30,000 and the convenience store was making 50,000, the pharmacist still might hold more weight. Like it still might be better for them, you know.
Japan is definitely
So
a country where education and degrees are still very valued. And I'm not just pulling this out of my ass. The real estate agency actually did tell her that, because my mom was like, I don't know if my kids will qualify because they're both part-time. This is how much they make. They're barely at the cusp of, you know, on paper able to rent. Like, we can afford it, but on paper it's, you know. And he was like, yeah, maybe they might not be able to, but the fact that you're a co-signer and that you're a pharmacist and you've had your business for 30 years will hold a lot of weight, is what she was told. So it makes a difference.
yep. So it's a whole nother topic, but while degrees in America are nearly useless at this point,
Unless it's
that's
very
a
specialized.
whole nother topic for another day. But here they're kind of get you qualified for things. So
Yeah, and it's not just for apartments, it's like for a lot of things. Whether you have a degree or not makes a huge difference socioeconomically.
do they care about me? Because I technically have a degree. Anyway. All right. Well, thanks for watching. If you watched the whole thing, awesome. Those have been the differences. That's what we've learned so far about renting an apartment in Japan. Thanks so much for watching, guys. And I'll see you in the next video.